So I'm going to talk about what it takes to become a doula and a little bit about what we do. You know, I know that for many of you, you know all of that already, but bear with me. And also I couldn't get my slides to work, so I'm going to have to have Angelo as my right-hand man. Angelo, can I have the next slide, please? So, as Sue said, I'm from DoulaUK. I'm a member of DoulaUK first and foremost, and it's a volunteer-led organisation. Our vision is to promote our doulas in the UK, our skilled doulas for family in the childbearing year, and we're very passionate about that being regardless of circumstance. You know, it's not just for rich people. It's for everybody. That's a real cornerstone of what we do. Next slide, please, Angela. So now the thing is, I can only talk about being a DoulaUK doula because from the minute I became a doula, I joined DoulaUK, and I've never not been a DoulaUK doula. But it's important to understand that in this country, anybody can sort of literally walk out the front door and say they're a doula. And in I think it was 2005, I could have that wrong, maybe it was 2001, forgive me. DoulaUK was created not to police doulas, but to bring a sort of gold standard together. Of course, there are really fantastic doulas who are not members of DoulaUK, but we believe that we have the gold standard. So what does a DoulaUK doula have, you know, just as a bare minimum? So they must have completed one of our approved training courses. Those training courses are reviewed every 3 or 4 years. You know, we have a curriculum that they have to meet. Our doulas have to go through a really rigorous mentoring and recognition process, and that can take a year or two. What's fantastic is that you tend to end up having a really great relationship with your mentor, and they're often your mentor, or at least a good source of information for your doula life, I guess. We have a extensive code of conduct, philosophy and policies, and it's black or white. You know, a DoulaUK doula has to comply with those. There you can have a look what they are. And interestingly, we also have a resolution process. So, for example, you know, everything is open to interpretation, and obviously, birth is, you know, I was going to say it's a messy business. It's a messy business. I didn't want to sound too negative, but just in case there is ever any miscommunications, we have a resolution process which protects both parties. Maybe there's 3 parties involved, and so that means that you know, we can really investigate if somebody maybe has misinterpreted the code of conduct, that being said either the doula or the client side. But it's a really nurturing sort of, the resolution process should feel like quite a nurturing experience for everybody. And we've also got the doula support network as well as part of that resolution process, should doulas need extra support they're not getting from each other or their mentor. We ask our doulas to commit to CPD. And we actually offer some really fantastic reduced CPDs. So people come to us with their courses, we evaluate them, and then we can offer them to our members, often at a reduced price. And our members are recommended to have insurance in place. This means that our doulas are trained, they're up to date, they're experienced, and they're well supported. Next slide, please, Angelo. So within DoulaUK, we've got about 700 members. That has stayed static for quite a long time. You know, life stages mean that, because being a doula is a pretty big commitment, and there are no millionaire doulas. So, you know, life stages mean that oftentimes, you know, people come and go, and we sort of stay static around 700. We'd like more, I think. And we've got local reps to keep you know, regional communications. As I said, we've got approved course providers. We've got 37 Access Fund doulas. Now that is a changing figure, but our Access Fund, it's very hard to keep going actually, but part of everybody's membership a little bit goes towards the Access Fund, and this means that we can provide doulas to people who cannot have access to it. It's not always as simple as can't afford it, but that generally is the case. But it might be somebody with limited financial control, no control over their finances or their circumstances, vulnerable asylum seekers, you know, anybody who wouldn't normally have access to be able to pay for it themselves. But we are a volunteer-led organisation, which means that the wheels can sometimes turn slowly, but we're all very passionate. That also means that everyone's here for their passion for it. Next slide, please. I probably don't need to tell you the membership benefits because you're probably not going to want to become a member this week, but if ever you do, please come and check us out. Next slide, please. This is just, as I mentioned before, we have approved course providers. We provide intro workshops for people who are thinking about it but don't want to commit to the whole shebang. They need to find out a little bit more about it. I've mentioned the mentoring and the CPD. We do have also an alternative pathway. So this is for people who have been a doula maybe in another country, or then maybe they've done the training a long time ago. It's not for midwives, and I'll come on to why that is later. But I think when you first read about it, you think it might be sort of a quicker way in, and it is, but only if you have already had doula training and experience, just maybe not in the UK. Next slide, please. Oh, this is where I'm going to redeem myself, actually. The highlights of our year. Number one, developing partnerships, including Maternity and Midwifery Hour. There, I redeem myself on my moment of the week. We've had a new website. We try and sort of promote doulas and get involved with the community, either sort of sometimes nationally, sometimes sort of more in local areas. We have a conference every year. We were talking about this before we came on air, that how much we miss an in-person conference. Maybe one day we'll get back to it. Monthly member circles, CPD courses, and we've got a podcast which we need to record some more of. So there's lots to DoulaUK. Next slide, please. But I've already talked about the Access Fund. So and next one, please, Angela. So in terms of sort of how many, you know, births and postnatal, because I think it's easy to think that doulas are just birth, but we are almost as many postnatal clients as we have birth clients. But looking at birth, this was the most recent annual returns. We ask all our members to return once a year, return their stats. So we've got, you can see, we've supported 2,420 births in 2024. 784 home births. I think I worked out that was a 32% home birth rate. We are not just about home births, but it does seem to be sort of quite a high proportion. But, you know, I've been to planned caesareans, emergency caesareans, consultant-led, midwifery-led. We're not just for a particular type of person or birth. We have, it's no surprise, we've got great breastfeeding rates for our clients. So on average, now this is really difficult, but to say the number of clients a doula birth clients a doula has is 5. If we could look at the most clients and the least clients, it would be wildly different. I know that there are some doulas that take on 1 or 2 clients a month. They do shared care, and obviously there are some that maybe do. I did one last year. It was a very special birth. I don't really do births anymore, so I think it's very difficult to look at your average number of birth clients. And the majority of doulas were paid between £600 and £2,000 per client. So I thought I'd just touch on what that would include for a birth client. It would most likely include at least 2 or 3 really quite intense sessions before the birth, kind of antenatal education, and really getting to know the family, getting to know the birth wishes, getting to know previous experiences, any other helpers, anyone else in the room, any other extended family members, any dynamics. We've got to, from our perspective, we need to kind of have a deep understanding of our client. And we try and sort of really unpick the kind of birth that they want. It obviously involves the birth itself, and that will include at least 2 weeks pre the due date and 2 weeks post the due date of being on call. So that means that doula, stays close to home, doesn't drink, has her phone on 24/7. We are it's so funny whenever we're organising a doula meetup, it's always yes, if I'm not at a birth, that is like if I'm not at a birth, if I'm on call, that's kind of the doula parlance, if you like. Next slide, please, Angelo. And then postnatal, I think sometimes postnatal is a little bit forgotten. I've got that's a sore spot for me because I mostly do postnatal these days, and I'm full-time as a postnatal doula most of the year. So nearly 2,000 postnatal supported families. Thousands of hours. Gosh, I feel like I've done some of those thousands of hours this week, actually. And 83% breastfeeding at final meeting. Now, I usually work up to the first year. Sometimes I'm only there for the first 2 weeks, but that's a really fantastic percentage. There's no other way. I can't put a negative spin on that. That's awesome. 4 is the average number of postnatal clients. Again, it just varies hugely. And of course, we can fit it in around our lives. So sometimes you might only get 1 postnatal client in a year because you're very, very busy doing other things. And sometimes, like me and this year, it seems to be pretty constant. Very lucky. Majority of doulas charge between £20 and £25 an hour. Sometimes that depends, obviously, on whereabouts in the country you're. Next slide, please, Angelo. So the formal description of what a doula does, because this session is about becoming and being, the formal description is that doulas provide practical, emotional and nurturing support to the whole family during pregnancy, labour and after the birth of baby. What this means actually is continuous care for our clients. So it's sometimes you might get called just for the birth and end up being a postnatal doula for a year. Sometimes you might just get called for some debriefing or some antenatal education, but we are generally, even if we're shared care, we are their kind of go-to. It's continuous. I think it's a connection. I always sort of say it's somewhere between sister and friend. It's it's almost like a paid-for relative. It's not just an employee, but it's so much more than that. But you are obviously in their service. Your job is to be of service to them, and that has always felt very, very clear to me. So we're knowledgeable. Right, we've got to do all this training. We've got to keep our CPT up. But part of that knowledge is not just, how a baby comes out or how a baby breastfeeds. It's tuning into the emotion, the culture and the beliefs of our families so that we can get a picture of what's going on for them, what will be their highs and their lows, what is going to give them joy and what is going to, trigger them. We are very lucky. We get to, because of the continuous care and the time we spend with them, we get to build trust. We understand where they're at, their experience, and we understand what's coming with us into that kind of birth and postnatal setup. So next slide, please, Angelo. So this, I think, is really important to explain to our clients as well. Really, sometimes, there is some misunderstanding amongst our clients, but we are not midwives and midwives are not doulas. This is why we have the alternative pathway just for doulas, because it's a very, very different job. We would never assume to be midwives. It's comparing apples and oranges. We don't perform medical tasks. We cannot make comment on medical matters or make diagnosis. We can provide further information that we know to be true. We can translate or signpost. We can signpost to research, policy and guidelines, but that's all we can do is display the current information, up-to-date information. We can't make a decision for a birthing person. So what we are responsible for is advocating and relaying that person's wishes, which may or may not change, of course, but that is our job. We're kind of really just a mouthpiece for their wishes. We must act within our code of conduct and within the law. I think I mentioned that earlier. That's really important, certainly to DoulaUK doulas. And that's kind of how you get to be a doula, and kind of what we do is very top line. I would, and next slide, that's just, that's kind of all for me. Thank you for listening, but I would love to answer any questions. I'm really interested in sharing, you know, what it means to be a doula, and if there's anything that I haven't covered in that, then, you know, please just ask away. Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Angela.